Hey everybody, hope this finds you doing well. This is Danelle here at Networkchain. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about Bitcoin. I mean, come on now. It's always about Bitcoin, right? Anyways, let's go ahead with the cryptocurrency market update. As you can see, Bitcoin is currently trading at $66,200. It's down just under 5% over the last 7 days. It's definitely been a little bit volatile over the last 7 days. We'll go over that a little bit more in a moment. Ethereum trading at $3,500. It's down 3.43%. Solana is down nearly 10%, currently trading at $145. We have XRP still around that 50-cent range, currently trading at 48 cents. Dogecoin, the top meme coin of them all, down 6% at just under 14 cents, trading currently. Toncoin still in the top 10, trading at 8, and Cardano still hanging in there at the number 10 slot, currently trading at 41 cents, down just a little over 5%. So if we go to the Bitcoin chart, we can see that Bitcoin has had a little bit of a volatile week. It is currently trading in that $66,000 range. It actually dipped down to that $65,000 range earlier this week, or earlier in the past week, I should say. And now we're looking to see if we can hold around that $66,000 level. Now, if we do break, we're looking at the year-to-date chart now. If we do break that $60,000 level, which we've pretty much been ranging in since March, so basically the last 3.5 months, once we took that major leg up after the news of the spot Bitcoin ETFs in January, we are now seeing that we're continuing to range in that $60,000 to $70,000 range. So as we've mentioned before in previous videos, this is more like an accumulation period, and it actually is fairly healthy for the cryptocurrency and Bitcoin market right now. So if we do see a dip below 60,000, which we did see momentarily the beginning of May, if we do see a dip below 60 and it closes below 60 on a daily chart, then we could potentially see some more downside, maybe down to around this $50,000 to $52,000 range. Now, obviously, we cannot predict the future, but it's something to keep an eye on. But most likely, at least for the time being, we're seeing that Bitcoin is continuing to range in that $60,000 to $70,000 range, and we may not break out of 70,000 until sometime later on this year. A lot of people are speculating about the Federal Reserve and whether or not they will be cutting rates, and we've talked about that when it comes to the interest rates. Obviously, a lot of high risk assets, and Bitcoin is considered one of those assets as well as tech stocks. Normally, when the interest rates are higher, a lot of times those tech stocks can be a little bit lower, but we're actually in a little bit of a different time period right now, as a lot of tech stocks and just the overall market has done very well this past year, particularly year to date since the beginning of 2024. When you look at Nvidia, when you look at what Apple is now doing since their artificial, or I should say Apple Intelligence announcement, you're seeing that a lot of these major tech stocks from Microsoft are doing very well over the past 6 months. So we're still waiting to see if the Federal Reserve will actually cut rates. We get inflation data, which comes out every month. It just recently came out this past week for the month of May, and we actually dropped down just 0.1%. We went from it being a 3.4% inflation rate. That is compared to a year ago. That's a year over year number of 3.4%. And then we came down to 3.3% for the month of May. So we are seeing that the interest rate being higher has actually helped with regards to inflation. And so the Federal Reserve has yet to decide whether or not they will cut interest rates, because obviously that does hurt the average consumer when it comes to borrowing money when it comes to mortgages. When you want to buy a house, the interest rates are higher. When it comes to buying a car, the interest rates are higher. So that obviously hurts a lot of people, because that makes their monthly bills a lot higher, and the amount that they are paying total for that particular asset. So people are looking for the Federal Reserve to hopefully make sure that they cut those rates. Some people are now saying that the rates may not come this year. If they do, it may only be one rate cut. Currently, right now, the interest rate, the Federal Reserve rate, is between 5.25% to 5.5%. So this is the 12 months percentage change, as we mentioned. of, and this is the chart for the past 20 years, as you can see. And so we've definitely been up and down. It's been quite volatile. Obviously, it had a 20-year high in 2022, and that's when the Federal Reserve came into the mix and started aggressively raising the interest rates. And as you can see, we have seen this precipitous decline down. They say that their goal is 2%. It may be very difficult to get back to that 2% range. So they could be cutting the rates once we get closer to that 1% range, which we are currently at the moment. So maybe they're looking to see if we stay in this range for the next several months, and maybe they will consider cutting potentially before the US election, which occurs in November of 2024. So MicroStrategy, which has been the largest asset holder or Bitcoin asset holder as a publicly traded company, and they own over 214,000 Bitcoin. They just announced that they will be raising $700 million to buy more Bitcoin. So they plan to use this $700 million that they hope to raise from a private offering, and what it is called is a convertible note that they will be offering to private institutions and to institutional investors. And so they are selling what they're called convertible senior notes. And so these notes would be able, for one, the investors would be getting interest from MicroStrategy, because basically it's like borrowing that MicroStrategy is doing from these institutional investors. So these notes will basically allow MicroStrategy to take those investor funds, and the investors in turn will get interest. Now, they're convertible in that they can either get their money back, and this would be, I believe it's until 2032. As you can see here, it would mature in 2032. So MicroStrategy would need to return those funds, or the note holders would have the opportunity to convert those notes into MicroStrategy stock. So basically, it is also these institutional investors making a bet basically on Bitcoin, because MicroStrategy stock moves along Bitcoin price because of the amount of Bitcoin that they hold. So they could basically be betting on Bitcoin as well, because if Bitcoin continues to go up over the next several years, then MicroStrategy stock will continue to go up over the next several years. And so potentially MicroStrategy stock will be much higher in 2032, or even earlier than that, than it is right now in 2024. So it could be a win-win situation for these institutional buyers that would be interested in getting these convertible senior notes from MicroStrategy. So this is just another strategy that MicroStrategy is using to be able to raise as much funds as possible in order to buy more Bitcoin. So they already own over 1% of the total Bitcoin supply that will ever be minted and mined. As we know, 21 million is all that there will be of Bitcoin, and with them having over 214,000, they are 1% holders of Bitcoin. So now we're seeing that more companies, more public companies are putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet. If you look at Similar Scientific, they recently announced their Bitcoin treasury strategy. They now have 581 Bitcoin. Actually, I believe it's a little bit more now. And they recently announced over the last week or two that they will also be adding to their treasury reserve asset. They are going to be adding, I believe it's about $150 million is what they're planning to add to their Bitcoin stash. So you can see here, their Bitcoin treasury strategy and purchase of Bitcoin underscored their belief that Bitcoin is a reliable store of value and a compelling investment. And this is from the Similar Scientific's chairman. It says Bitcoin is now a major asset class with more than 1 trillion of market value. We believe it has unique characteristics as a scarce and finite asset that can serve as a reasonable inflation hedge and safe haven amid global instability. We also believe in digital architectural resilience makes it preferable to gold, which has a market value of approximately 10 times that of Bitcoin. So given the gap in value between gold and Bitcoin, we believe that Bitcoin has the potential to generate outsized returns as it gains increasing acceptance as digital gold. I really couldn't say it any better than that. This is one of the major thesis that people have when it comes to Bitcoin and the Bitcoin standard. We once had the gold standard when fiat was backed by gold. That was nixed in 1971 by President Nixon in the United States. But gold did become the global reserve asset and store of value. And now people see the properties of Bitcoin and how it can be a better, what many believe is a better form of gold, and calling it digital gold. So we shall see if we do have the Bitcoin standard. Over time, we're seeing worldwide interest in Bitcoin when we see countries like Australia just launch their Bitcoin ETFs. Thailand just approved Bitcoin ETFs. We see it is already trading in Canada as well as Germany, on the London Stock Exchange, obviously in the United States. So we are seeing that the returns of Bitcoin is undeniable. And if you go here to MicroStrategy, they have a chart here that gets a chance to that shows you the risk-adjusted returns of cryptocurrencies versus different indexes, different commodities, different stocks. So you can have a better idea and see what is the return that Bitcoin has producing over the last several years, or really since its existence. And so you can't deny the returns, and that's why you're starting to see so much interest from not only institutional investors but sovereign nations and other areas around the world that are curious about getting into Bitcoin. So for example, if we do the comparison of Bitcoin versus gold, we just hover here, we see that the return versus Bitcoin, gold is minus 53%, and this is over the past 12 months. Gold actually has done fairly well against Bitcoin over the last 3 months, because as we mentioned, Bitcoin over the last 3 months has been basically ranging in that $60,000 to $70,000 range. So we see that gold has actually done fairly well over the last 3 months. But when you look at the last 5 years, the last 12 months, it's undeniable. Bitcoin clearly has outperformed gold. When you see here that Bitcoin has done 154%, so it's done basically a 2.5x in 1 year compared to 18, basically 19% for gold. So you can do this for a lot of the other major indexes. For example, you can look at the S&P 500, which there's this list of all the companies that are currently in the S&P 500. Actually, MicroStrategy could potentially be eligible to be in the S&P 500 within this year, probably next year, if anything. They could be announced as an addition to the S&P 500. These are the top 500 companies in the United States. And as you can see here, the return against Bitcoin, similar to gold, it's a over 50% loss against Bitcoin. You can see here, once again, Bitcoin did a 2.5x at 154%, and the S&P 500 made a return of 23%. And in traditional circles, 23% in a 12-month period is incredible. And so it's always of interest to consider diversification and investing. Obviously, do your research to determine what is the best strategy for you. So 23% is actually a really good return. But when you look at Bitcoin, it just completely outnumbers, outsizes, outclasses when it comes to the performance in returns if you put your money into Bitcoin as opposed to any of these other assets. So you can take a look here and check out MicroStrategy's information with regards to Bitcoin and how it compares to some of the major companies in the world. But there's no denying that Bitcoin strategy and their risk-adjusted returns versus different currencies and indexes, as well as other metals, stocks, and bonds versus BTC, there really is no competition. So just make sure to keep posted here with us on X as well as IG. We post there more often, nearly every day. Thank you so much for watching. Continue to learn. The world of finance is evolving right before our eyes. Stay tuned. In the meantime, we look forward to linking up with you on the network chain. Bye-bye.